All right, let's kick things off with a real head scratcher. Imagine this, a tiny windswept island. Archaeologists dig up what looks like a medieval grave, but get this, what they found inside wasn't human at all. And it's a discovery that just blows the lid off a part of the medieval world we rarely get to see. So back in 2017, a team of archaeologists on the island of Guernsey stumbled upon something, well, something truly bizarre. They're on this little islet that gets cut off by the tide, and they find this pit. It was dug so carefully, shaped exactly like a human grave. But when they looked inside, no person. What they found instead was the complete skeleton of a harbor porpoise. And we're talking 14th century. This wasn't an accident. This animal was intentionally, carefully buried. Which, of course, leads to the big question, right? Why on earth would medieval people bury a porpoise? And let me tell you, the answer is not simple at all. To even start to get our heads around it, we have to dig into what a creature like this actually meant to people back then. Okay, so the first piece of this puzzle is just how incredibly valuable these animals were. You have to understand, for a medieval coastal community, seeing a stranded whale or porpoise wash up wasn't a sad event. Oh no. It was like a floating treasure chest just landed on their beach. People saw it as a literal gift from God. And it's just wild when you see how they used every single part of the animal. The meat, that was a high-status food, a real delicacy. The blubber was turned into oil for lamps, for soap. The bones, these massive bones, they were used for everything from building materials to, just a simple chopping block. And then you've got ivory and baleen being made into fancy luxury items and everyday stuff. Literally nothing went to waste. But the absolute jackpot, the most precious thing you could get from one of these animals, was this weird-looking stuff, ambergris. It actually forms in the intestines of sperm whales, so it's super rare and was worth a fortune. I mean, they literally called it floating gold. It was used in perfumes, spices, people even thought it was an aphrodisiac. Crazy, right? So here's the key thing to remember. For most of this period, people in Europe weren't building giant ships and heading out to hunt whales. Not yet. They were opportunists. A whale washing ashore was a huge event, like a lottery win delivered by the sea. And that whole idea that these were gifts from God, that's absolutely central to understanding their place in the medieval mindset. But, and this is where the story gets really interesting, it gets complicated. Because as much as these animals were a valuable gift, they were also seen as something else, something much, much darker. I mean, the way medieval people saw whales was a total contradiction. On one hand, they were technically classified as fish. Super clever, right? Because that meant you could eat them during religious fasting periods like Lent, when red meat was off limits. Porpoise was even considered a delicacy fit for a king. But then, on the other hand, you look at the folklore and it's filled with these terrifying sea monsters. You've got stories of giant whales that pretend to be islands, just waiting for sailors to land and light a fire before they dive down and drown everyone. Pure nightmare fuel. And this idea really nails the fear they inspired. There was this concept right out of Christian stories like Jonah and the whale, that the whale's mouth was basically the gate to hell. The animal itself became a symbol for the devil, this huge evil force just waiting in the deep. So think about that. They were both a prized food and a vision of hell itself. Talk about a contradiction. So how do we make sense of that? A gift from God and a monster from hell all in one? Well, the archaeological record gives us some real tangible clues. It shows us exactly how these animals were woven into the fabric of everyday life, from the king's castle all the way down to the local butcher shop. Okay, so at the absolute top end, the pinnacle of luxury and status, you get these. The famous Lewis chessmen. These things were intricately carved back in the 12th century, made from walrus ivory and, you guessed it, whale teeth. This is the ultimate status symbol, the kind of thing only the super rich could ever hope to own. And then, you have this. A simple whale vertebra, just covered in scars from countless cuts and chops. This wasn't for a king, this was a tool. A heavy, durable, super convenient chopping block for the local butcher. And that contrast, right there, is everything. It shows you the whole spectrum of the whale's role in their world, from a symbol of ultimate power to a simple, practical piece of equipment. Okay, so now we've got a sense of the value, the fear, and the sheer usefulness of these animals. With all that in our back pocket, we can finally go back to that weird grave on Guernsey and try to crack this thing open. Right, so armed with all this new context, the archaeologists basically narrowed it down to two main theories. Was this some kind of strange act of reverence, a ritual for a creature they both respected and feared? Or was there something much more practical going on? So, theory number one is all about reverence. Maybe, just maybe, this was some kind of special, one-off ritual, a way to show respect for this creature that was both a monster and a gift from God. Then there's theory number two, hiding the evidence, a much more down-to-earth explanation. Basically, was someone trying to hide the remains of their dinner? Now, this is where it gets good. Here's a huge clue. The little island where they found the grave, it's right next to the ruins of a medieval priory. And who lived there? Benedictine monks. Now, we know porpoise was a delicacy, but it was still a fancy, high-status food. Monks were supposed to be living a simple, abstinent life. So, that definitely gives them a motive for wanting to keep a fancy dinner a secret, right? But this is the real clincher. When historians looked at the records from Guernsey from that exact time, the 13th and 14th centuries, they're just full of legal fights over who got to keep stranded porpoises. See, they were considered fishes royal, which meant they technically belonged to the king. We've got actual documents showing the king's guys and the local abbot arguing over who owned them. So if you just took one without permission, that was poaching. It was a crime. So imagine you're a monk, you find a porpoise, eating it is illegal, and just chucking the bones in the sea, that's risky, they could wash up. But a nice, deep, careful burial, well, that starts to make a whole lot of sense. So it looks like the mystery of the porpoise grave probably isn't about some strange ritual after all. It's about something much more human, medieval law, and a craving for a forbidden meal. And it really makes you think, doesn't it? This one single grave opened up this whole forgotten world of beliefs and economics and laws. It just makes you wonder, what other stories, what other secrets about our incredibly complex relationship with the natural world are still buried right under our feet, just waiting to be found?